communities and labor unions affected by the closure of the Optimum Coal Mine have given lawyers urgent instructions to oppose the application. They say if the preservation order is granted, thousands who are reliant on the mine for jobs will be affected. The Mpumalanga Action Movement has been mandated by the communities to do everything possible to vehemently oppose the matter and save jobs. Joining me now in studio is a representative of the movement, Thabo Masombuka, who is in studio with me. Mr. Masombuka, thank you very much for your time. Just in very simple terms, give us the reasons why you are fighting to oppose the preservation order that the NPA is seeking against this mine.
Okay, thank you, Polly. Thank you for the opportunity and your viewers at home. Just a quick context. We are part of a team of lawyers that have been instructed by at least 7 communities surrounding the operations of Optimum Coal Mine to first look into considering intervening in the proceedings that the NPA as a National Prosecution Authority has initiated, in terms of which they seek a preservation order in terms of Section 38 of the POCA, in terms of which they want to forfeit the mine and obviously sell it to the state and recover the monies that are suspected to have been appropriated through the Guptas.
Yeah.
Now, just a quick context, Polly. It's important to understand that the current mine we're talking about is currently under business rescue. Now, in law, the purpose of a business rescue process is meant to rescue and resuscitate a business that is in distress in a balanced way, of course, to ensure that the interest of stakeholders are taken care of. And what are these stakeholders? These are your creditors, both preferred, assumed, and undisputed. Workers in particular. Now, there are over 500 and something directly affected ex-employees of that mine who are now seated at home without an income, without food, without any form of economic activity, and over 1,000 indirectly affected ex-employees. Now, there are people who have lived all their lives around that mine. And if you look at the economy of the province, it is, one of the obviously destitute province for all intents and purposes. Now, that mine was providing a significant economic leverage to that economy. So if the NPA succeed in obtaining this preservation order, what this means is that first, the business rescue plan that has been published, 95% adopted, and there is a shareholder vote at the end of March to completely adopt that plan so that it can be implemented, and part of the requirements and part of the strategic priorities of that plan. And when we engage the business rescue practitioner, we made it very clear that the priorities should be your ex-employees, should be your communities that rely on that mine for economic activity through forms of procurement and contracts. So it is very critical that we gather and mobilize stakeholders against this application, because it is not in the interest of justice.
Let me step in there very quickly, if I can. It's important that viewers move with us.
Correct.
Part of what I understand to be a major reason why you are opposed to the preservation order that is being sought by the NPA is that it will lead to this mine being sold on public auction, which will then lead to the mine's real value being lessened, and therefore ultimately lead to a devastation in terms of jobs for the employees that you speak of, and indeed the surrounding communities. But here's a question I have for you.
Okay.
The NPA, on the other hand, is worried that this mine could potentially fall into the hands of a former Gupta business partner, along with the assets that it probably is worried could be stripped. And so the question here is, which is the better option between these two? The mine being sold on public auction, which will lessen its value, according to you, or the mine falling back into the hands of people who allegedly bought it under corrupt means.
Correct. So a step back. A step back only says, we have gone through the business rescue plan and the proposition. And we have looked at an avenue created to allow for competitive bidders of the mine.
Yeah.
So one of the business rescue conditions is that as you rescue the mine, you must therefore allow for competitive bids to be able to place an offer to purchase on the mine based on its market capital value. All right? So that process is underway. There has been some form of bidders that have placed the offer to purchase the mine. Because of priority is not just because the NPA alleges that the mine in its current form was acquired through proceed of criminality and money laundering. And for all intents and purposes, the community's view is that that's neither here nor there. It's neither here nor there because it's two bulls fighting and the community is the grass. The NPA has got all the statutory and the legal instruments available at its disposal to get to the bottom of these transactions without rushing into attachment of this mine.
Yeah.
Because, if you look at Section 38 in its proper construct, and if you look at the construct of a provision, you always have to look at what is intended, was intended by the legislature when they created that act. They created that act in order to ensure that instruments or properties that were used to pursue criminality, to pursue a criminal offense, are actually through civil means forfeited to the state so that the state can recover. And we were aware of CARA, which is your criminal assets recovery account, and we are in support of that. And when we engage with the new prospective buyers, and in order for the NPA to arrive at the logical conclusion of who constitute the new prospective buyers, it's a process. It's a corporate process on its own.
But let me ask you this. But let me ask you this, because that's what South Africans are probably interested in as well.
Yes.
The community and their concerns, definitely that is something that should be central to this. But are you aware of this prospective buyer, who they are or who he is? Are you able to answer that directly?
To the best of our instructions, there are potential prospective buyers. There is no single specific prospective buyer. There are potential. And neither of those potential buyers have been single-handedly linked to the previous transactions that have actually alleged to have been illegally transacted upon.
Are you aware of a Daniel McGowan who runs a company called Liberty Energy? Could there have been a name or a company that may have expressed an interest?
We are aware that that's one of the potential bidders. But like I said, Xoli, there are potential bidders to the asset, which is the Optimum Coal Mine. And our interest as the community and the interest of our clients, which is the community, is that the battles to ascertain the illegality or legality of the attainment of acquisition of the mine is a battle that the NPA has to pursue separately. Currently, the mine is under business rescue. The business rescue plan and process has to be allowed to roll out because part of the significant condition of that business rescue process is that it must reintegrate the employees. It must ensure that it recapitalizes and reoperationalize the mine so that the mine can go back in its functionality and be able to serve the economic interest of the people of that region. There are at least seven communities that directly are affected by the closure of the mine.
Yes.
And if that is retained, if the situation perpetuates, there are huge, significant economic devastation that are likely to unfold there.
Does the community trust that the business rescue practitioners who are trying to get this mine working again are working in the best interests of the employees in particular, and of course, the surrounding community?
If you look at the current situation in the status quo, the mine has ceased operation, except for a few mini-pit contracts, whose mini-pit contracts were meant to ensure that royalties are paid to the mine so that it can retain at least the payment of severance packages for those ex-employees, and ensure that it pays, even at a reduced scale, the salaries of the ex-employees. We have, as part of our mandate, done a case study and analysis of the legal situation that is currently facing the mine, to ascertain first the prospects of success as an intervening party in the proceedings. Because remember, these proceedings are not the proceedings between the NPA and the community. These are proceedings between the NPA and the business rescue practitioners and the potential buyer, which is Templar. So we are entering our notice of intention to intervene in order to place before the court what we call material and substantive legal arguments that presents a compelling case why, in the bigger scheme of things, the preservation order is not a priority.
When is the case going to court?
The case is set down for the 28th of March this year. So we are currently compiling, as I speak to you now, a number of ex-employees in our offices in Middelburg are compiling affidavits which indicate the economic destitution that has arisen as a result of the mine being closed. By the way, Koli, it is important for society and the community of South Africa to understand that the stance by the community does not seem to suggest that what the Guptas did is right. Does not seem to suggest that the NPA does not have prospects of success in their prosecution of the Guptas. By the way, the Guptas slipped out of the country under the NPA's nose. The Guptas left this country and no one is able to account to their whereabouts. And we are saying, as community representatives for purposes of this application, the NPA has got all means available at its disposal. It has got what we call the legal instruments, the legislative authority and power to pursue the Guptas and bring them to book. And by the way, when that happens, me and you know, I mean, if you look at the Assange case in the United Kingdom, which was sought by the United States for whatever crime, it's been 10 years now that they are seeking to extradite it. And so extradition proceedings in their own right can take as long as 10 to 15 years. What happens to those people who used to rely on those mines and that mine for economic activity? That's our priority and interest.
Indeed. And these legal processes, they do take a long time. But for the moment, let's leave it there. Thabo Masombuka, a legal representative of the Mpumalanga Action Movement. They are a group of communities, I think I could put it like that, group of communities who are fighting that this mine, Optimum Coal Mine, basically gets back into operation so that jobs can be preserved.